My name's Chloe, and I'm a stripper. I started dancing probably around 7 months ago, give or take, and it's something that I actually really enjoy. It's brought a lot of pros and cons into my life. It's definitely an experience for sure, and I put a questions thing up on my Instagram story. I also put together a list of things that I thought I should include that would be important. The first thing that I think is the most important with how to get started is emotionally preparing yourself for the job. So something that I like to tell myself is to leave my emotions at the door, because it is a very emotionally invested job, and you can be happy and have fun at work, but don't let rejection or the pressure of it overcome you and stress you out and make you depressed or anxious, because that is not what it's about at all. You just have to have the right mindset going into it. Boundaries are definitely something that are super important. Don't be too suggestive with guys, just because when you're offering them a private room, you can be like, oh, the private room will give us a lot more time together for a better price, and it'll be a lot more alone time. And they'll be like, what does the alone time include? Just a lot more one-on-one time with me. But don't say something like, a lot more happens in the private room, and then get mad when he expects a lot more to happen in the private room. So just draw those lines with yourself, and remember the difference between the fantasy and reality. Also, something with leaving your emotions at the door, a phrase that a lot of the girls told me when I first started working there and dealt with rejection a lot. Finding your favorite stripper at a club is also like buying a car. Sometimes you want leather, and sometimes you want heated seats, sometimes you want four-wheel drive, and sometimes you want a nice stereo system. Everyone's gonna have their type, and just because you're not someone's type doesn't mean that you're not worth their time or that you're not good enough. Don't let a customer tell you what to look like. So I get so many people in there and they're like, wow, you look so young, you have hardly any makeup on, you don't have any tattoos, that's great, stay like that forever. I'll think to myself, I'm gonna go home, and before I go to sleep tonight, I'm gonna be like, thank God I didn't get a sleeve, just so I could impress that one guy that I met today that I'm never gonna see again in my life. Look the way that you want to look, and there's going to be money regardless. The audition process is normally pretty basic. Sometimes they have you fill out an application, and sometimes they don't. Most of the time when you go in, you're going to have to audition. Something that I definitely recommend, maybe taking a basics pole class or watching YouTube videos or tutorials on floor work and pole work. Floor work is probably one of the most important just for starting out, and as long as you're feeling yourself and you look good on stage during the audition, they'll probably hire you, unless it's some crazy acrobatic insane club that you have to have circus skills at. I'm pretty sure you'll be fine. Different clubs are different for hiring girls. Some clubs don't like a lot of tattoos. Some clubs like girls who are super skinny. Other clubs you have to have a really nice butt to work there. Every club is going to be different with the audition process, and just because one club doesn't take you for your look doesn't mean another club won't. It's kind of like modeling. You have your own look, and some agencies are going to like it and others won't. Touching. Certain clubs, and I think this is definitely important for your own personal boundaries and what you're comfortable with, certain clubs will let guys touch pretty much anywhere other than below the bikini line. Some clubs, guys can't touch you at all. Some clubs are you can touch her arms or hug her. Don't get too close. That's definitely something important to look at when you're thinking about your own personal boundaries with clubs that you're looking to work at, because you don't want to make yourself uncomfortable and then have a bad experience and then leave and never want to do it again. Nudity. Okay, so the first club that I ever worked at was a fully nude club. Some clubs have fully nude, some clubs it's only topless, and some clubs like you to wear pasties. They're all different, and that's also something to look at when you're thinking about your boundaries and what you're comfortable with. You can find different clubs that kind of fit your needs. So scheduling, this is great. The first club that I ever worked at, I actually didn't have a schedule at all. I could come and go as I pleased, take a break whenever, come in as long as I got there by 1 in the morning. I could pretty much work whenever I want, leave for a month, come back. They didn't really care. Most of the clubs you get to pick your own schedule, and you have an open schedule too if they do have a schedule, which is really great. Private rooms and lap dances. Lap dances are normally around $20 to $40. It depends on the club that you're working at, obviously, the price. Sometimes they can touch, sometimes they can't, it just depends. Sometimes you have to give a percentage of what you make from the lap dance. So There's a club that I worked at that a lap dance for one song was $30, and then you paid them $5 for letting you give the lap dance. And I'll explain why they do that later too. Private rooms, so basically that's kind of like a guy is renting you out for a certain amount of time. So it goes anywhere from 15 minutes to like hours. During the time that you're in the private room, they take you off of the list to like be on stage. So you don't have to like worry about like running back and forth between the guy and the stage. Pricing for private rooms is different everywhere. There have been clubs that I've been at where a guy buys you out for a half an hour and you only charge $150, which kind of sucks because I feel like you could definitely make more within a half an hour. That's definitely when you have to look at the difference between quantity over quality. There are other places where you charge like $1,000 for the hour. It really just depends on the club that you're working at, and that's also something to look at depending on, do I want to make insane amounts of money and do this all the time? Then I should probably look at a club that charges more for the time. Some clubs, you kind of just make your own price and then you just pay them a certain amount for the amount of time that the guy has rented you out for. So, for example, there was a club that I worked at and I would charge $500 for a guy to spend an hour with me. That doesn't mean I'm dancing for the whole hour. A lot of times we just sit and like hang out and talk. For that $500 that I would charge someone at the club that I was working at the time, you would pay them $25 for the hour and then you kept the rest. The reason why you have to pay them for lap dances or for a private room, and you also have to pay them rent when you come in, and I'll talk more about that later, is because you're technically an independent contractor. So an independent contractor is kind of like a performer almost. In this case, the club that you're working at is your venue and you're the entertainment. You pay them in order to perform there, the rest is yours. That's really nice just because like you don't really have to answer to anyone, you're kind of your own boss. Obviously, like aside from the rules that are set in the club, everything else is kind of just up to you and how much money you make, and everything that happens is kind of up to you, which is really nice. Rent, a lot of clubs will make you pay rent up front when you get there. Like right when you get there you have to pay a certain amount. It normally goes with the time that you got there, or it's just a set price depending on the weekday, how busy it is. Some clubs will make you pay up front and then some clubs will make you pay before you leave. It just depends. Overall, it's really not that bad. Some clubs will charge insanely high prices for rent. At those clubs you probably also make more money though. And then other clubs will charge you a very low amount. You still can probably make really good money there too. So that's definitely something to look at when you are browsing through clubs to work at. How much do I make? So it differs between the club, the time of year. There's so many different variables that come into it. I think the lowest I've ever made was $300 and the highest I've ever made was around like $2,000. And I think a lot of it depends on you. There are a lot of benefits to dancing. It's a great workout while you're at work. I've noticed that I've lost a lot of weight and gained a lot of muscle since doing pole. It's something that I love. I actually have a pole at home and I practice it literally just for fun and for workout, and it's something that I really enjoy. You meet so many amazing girls with just these open-minded mindsets. The open hours, obviously, that's really nice because it gives you time to travel. That's something that I love about my job, is that I'm a traveling dancer, so I plan on going to a lot more states and just kind of like working for a weekend in like Texas or Portland, wherever I want to go. I can just pretty much pick up and work, just audition and work either that night or the next day. So it's great. There's always places to make money when you're dancing. Cons of dancing. It is a very emotionally draining job. It's definitely something that takes a lot out of you when you are trying so hard to like give like just this positivity to someone else so that they will want to spend time with you. This personally hasn't been a con for me, but I want to include this just because I've heard from other girls that this has been a con for them, that after giving so many dances and being so sensual and seductive all night and then coming home to their significant other, it's really hard for them to be intimate with their significant other because they're just kind of worn out and they don't want to be touched or looked at or anything. I've never personally had that problem, but I do know people who have. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Being in a relationship while dancing can be both a pro and a con. I'm blessed to be in a relationship with the most amazing girl who supports me in whatever I do and trusts me unconditionally. Doesn't really have any concerns with my job, but I have heard a lot of horror stories about girls telling me that it has ruined every relationship they've ever been in, from distrust and jealousy. So you have to definitely think about that. Like, if you don't feel very secure in the relationship that you're in right now, this might not be the job for you. Another con to it is definitely the late nights. You're not going to be a morning person. You're going to want to sleep in all day. I have to force myself to get up after only sleeping around like 5 or 6 hours, because some clubs stay open till like 6 in the morning, and that's crazy, but that's, you know, the hard truth about it. It's very physically strenuous. You will have bruises all over your body, I guarantee it, from doing floor work, rubbing your knees against the floor when you're dancing, gripping the pole with your thighs or your arms. You're gonna be sore, you're gonna get injured. That's why it's really important to stretch and stuff before work. The most important thing to pay attention to is safety. The clubs that I like to work at are the clubs that the managers are surrounded around respecting the girls. If something happens, you know that you can go to them and they're going to fix the problem. Like, if a guy disrespects you and make you feel uncomfortable, like, they will make him leave. Do the bouncers walk you out to your car? Or do they have a valet that will pull your car up for you? Because a lot of times guys are going to be like, wow, I really like this girl, and then they're going to try and follow you afterwards. That's not okay. Clubs will have bouncers or valets that will either walk you out to your car or bring your car up to you and make sure that you get in there safely. If you are driving home from work and you notice that a car has been following you for a certain amount of time, if you're super close to home, contact the authorities, because it's better to be safe than sorry. If you're closer to the club, drive back to the club, call the club, notify them, let them know what's going on. That way you can be safe. Most clubs will have lockers or cameras in the dressing room. The reason why this is important is because there will be some girls who will think it's okay to go in and take your things. So just make sure that you're keeping your stuff safe and in a spot where nothing bad can happen to it, just because the clothes that we wear at work are super expensive, especially the heels. They can range anywhere from like $50 to $300 depending on how nice they are. So definitely be careful with your stuff. Cameras in private rooms or bouncers. If you're in a private room, it's private. So some clubs will have servers that come in every once in a while and they're like, hey, like, do you want anything to drink? Like, are you okay? Or they'll have a bouncer that kind of like peeks in and checks up on you and makes sure that you're doing all right. And then other private rooms will have cameras. So all of these things are super important just to make sure that you don't get taken advantage of in a private room. Going to read some more questions from my Instagram. How the hell do you wear those shoes, let alone dance in them? This is actually very interesting to me and something that I've always been like, oh my god, like, how does anyone do that? The higher the heel, actually the easier for it to walk in. Also, stripper heels, they don't have as high of an incline. Like, you can see how high it is right here, but inside of the shoe it's actually pretty flat. They have to make them comfortable to walk in since you're doing all of this excessive physical activity. So it's really not that bad. How do you not fall in those shoes? I have been doing this for 7 months and I can confidently say that I still fall. It doesn't really happen to a lot of the girls, to be honest. I think I'm just kind of naturally clumsy, but it definitely gets better over time and you'll get used to it. Alright, thank you so much for bearing with me. I'm sure I played with my hair way too much and said like at least 200 times. I'm probably not talking loud enough. I don't really know how to work this camera, and I'm going to try and do a solid job editing the video, but I apologize if it looks like a 12-year-old did it. I would love to see down below in the comments if any of you have danced before and what your experience was like, and anything that I might have left out or any other questions that you have. But other than that, thank you so much.
If I'ma be honest, I can't help but stay, yeah, I'm losing my balance. Got me running in circles around